On a crisp autumn day at Evergreen University, the air filled with the scent of fallen leaves and possibility, Daniel sat sketching the intricate details of the campus's historic clock tower. His pencil moved deftly across the paper, capturing every nuance of the weathered stone and ornate metalwork. So absorbed was he in his work that he barely noticed the commotion until it was right upon him. Sarah, her arms overloaded with heavy law textbooks, was rushing across the quad when her foot caught on an uneven paver. Time seemed to slow as she stumbled, books and papers flying in all directions. Daniel's reflexes kicked in, and he lunged forward, managing to catch her before she hit the ground. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them faded away. Sarah's emerald eyes widened in surprise, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Daniel found himself captivated by the freckles dusting her nose and the way her chestnut hair caught the sunlight. "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. "I guess I should watch where I'm going." Daniel smiled shyly, helping her gather her scattered belongings. "It happens to the best of us. I'm Daniel, by the way." "Sarah," she replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'd love to stay and chat, but I'm already late for Professor Hawthorne's constitutional law class. Maybe I'll see you around." As she hurried off, Daniel found himself hoping that maybe would become a certainty. The courtship over the next few weeks, Daniel and Sarah's paths crossed with increasing frequency. What started as casual conversations over coffee in the campus cafe evolved into study sessions in the library that stretched late into the night. They discovered a shared passion for making a difference in the world. Daniel through sustainable architecture, Sarah through environmental law. Their first official date was at Il Giardino, a small Italian restaurant just off campus. The warm glow of candlelight softened Sarah's features as she passionately described her dream of becoming an environmental lawyer. Daniel listened intently, mesmerized by her enthusiasm and the way her hands moved animatedly as she spoke. "What about you?" Sarah asked, taking a sip of wine. "What drives your passion for architecture?" Daniel paused, considering his words carefully. "I believe that the spaces we inhabit shape our lives in profound ways. I want to create buildings that not only serve a purpose, but also inspire and uplift the people who use them, and to do it in a way that respects and protects our environment." Sarah reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "That's beautiful, Daniel. I think we're going to change the world together." The wedding, 5 years later, on a perfect spring day, Daniel and Sarah stood hand in hand in the botanical gardens where they had shared their first kiss. The air was heavy with the scent of roses and promises of forever. Sarah was a vision in white, her gown a cascade of delicate lace that seemed to float around her as she walked down the aisle. Daniel's eyes welled with tears as he watched her approach, his heart so full of love he thought it might burst. Their vows were deeply personal, each word carefully chosen to express the depth of their commitment. "Sarah," Daniel began, his voice thick with emotion, "you are the blueprint of my heart, the foundation of my dreams. I promise to build our life together with the same care and attention to detail that I put into my designs, to create a home filled with love, laughter, and endless possibility." Sarah's eyes glistened as she spoke. "Daniel, you are my rock, my shelter in every storm. I vow to stand by your side through every challenge, to celebrate every triumph and to love you with the same passion and dedication that I bring to fighting for justice. You make me want to be better, to do better, every single day." As they exchanged rings, the golden bands glinting in the sunlight, their friends and family knew they were witnessing the beginning of something truly special. The first few years of marriage were a whirlwind of joy and shared dreams. They bought a charming craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood, its wrap-around porch the perfect spot for morning coffee and late-night conversations about their future. Weekends were spent renovating their home, turning it into a perfect reflection of their combined tastes. Daniel's architectural sketches adorned the walls alongside Sarah's collection of rare law books. They planted a vegetable garden in the backyard, talking about the children they hoped to have someday, as they tilled the soil and sowed seeds. Their careers flourished. Daniel's innovative, eco-friendly designs caught the attention of several high-profile clients, earning him a reputation as a rising star in sustainable architecture. Sarah quickly made a name for herself at her law firm. Her sharp mind and unwavering dedication to environmental causes earning her the respect of colleagues and opponents alike. Despite their busy schedules, they always made time for each other. Daniel would leave handwritten love notes in Sarah's briefcase, each one a poetic reminder of his devotion. Sarah never failed to call Daniel during her lunch break, even on her busiest days, just to hear his voice and share a moment of connection. The cracks begin to show. As the years passed, however, the demands of their high-powered careers began to take their toll. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Romantic dinners were replaced by quick meals eaten while checking emails, and the long, intimate conversations that once defined their relationship now felt rushed and superficial. Sarah found herself feeling increasingly restless and unfulfilled. She loved Daniel deeply, but the passion that had once consumed them seemed to have faded into comfortable routine. She craved excitement, adventure, something to make her feel alive again. One night, as they lay in bed, Sarah turned to Daniel. "Do you ever feel like something's missing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel, half asleep, mumbled, "What do you mean?" Sarah sighed, turning away. "Never mind. It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing, and they both knew it. Enter Mark. Mark Callahan entered Sarah's life during one of her firm's biggest cases, a high-profile corporate dispute that required long hours and constant communication with clients. Mark was the CEO of the company Sarah was representing, tall, confident, with piercing blue eyes and an easy charm that made him impossible to ignore. Their first meeting was in the firm's conference room, surrounded by stacks of legal documents and the hum of fluorescent lights. As Sarah outlined their legal strategy, she couldn't help but notice the way Mark listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. "I'm impressed, Sarah," he said after she finished her presentation. "You have a way of making even the most complex legal jargon sound like poetry." Sarah felt a flutter in her stomach at the compliment, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. As they worked closely together over the following weeks, Sarah found herself drawn to Mark in ways she hadn't anticipated. He was everything Daniel wasn't: spontaneous, passionate, with a dangerous glint in his eye that made her heart race. The affair, What started as harmless flirtation quickly spiraled into something far more dangerous. One evening, after a particularly grueling deposition, Mark suggested they get a drink to unwind. Sarah hesitated but agreed, telling herself it was just two colleagues celebrating a small victory. The bar was dimly lit, the air heavy with the scent of whiskey and possibility. As they sat close together in a secluded booth, their knees touching under the table, Sarah felt a spark of electricity she thought she had lost forever. "You're extraordinary, Sarah," Mark murmured, his hand brushing hers. "You deserve someone who appreciates just how amazing you are." When Mark leaned in to kiss her outside the bar that night, Sarah knew she should pull away. But the thrill of the moment, the intoxicating mix of desire and danger, overwhelmed her sense of right and wrong. From that night on, Sarah found herself living a double life. There were secret meetings in hotel rooms, passionate encounters in the back of Mark's car, hushed phone calls when Daniel was asleep. Sarah told herself it was just physical, that it didn't mean anything, but deep down she knew she was falling for Mark. The guilt ate at her, manifesting in subtle ways. She became short-tempered with Daniel, finding fault in little things he did or said. She threw herself into her work even more, using it as an excuse to avoid intimate moments with her husband. At night, she would lie awake, Daniel's steady breathing beside her, a constant reminder of her betrayal. Meanwhile, Daniel remained blissfully unaware, or so it seemed. He noticed Sarah becoming more distant, but chalked it up to stress from work. He tried to rekindle their romance, planning surprise date nights, booking weekend getaways. But Sarah always seemed to have an excuse, a late meeting, a work emergency. The night Daniel discovered the truth started like any other. He was working late in his home office, going over blueprints for a new sustainable housing project. Sarah had texted earlier saying she'd be home late due to a client dinner. As he was tidying up the kitchen, Sarah's phone, left forgotten on the counter, lit up with a message. Daniel glanced at it casually, not intending to pry, but the words on the screen made his blood run cold. "Can't wait to see you again, Hard Eyes, Mark." In that moment, Daniel's world shattered. He sat at the kitchen table, Sarah's phone in his hands, as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the way Sarah would smile at her phone when she thought he wasn't looking, it all made sense now. The aftermath, what followed, were weeks of silent agony as Daniel grappled with the truth of Sarah's betrayal. He hired a private investigator who provided him with irrefutable evidence of the affair, photos of Sarah and Mark together, entering hotels, sharing intimate dinners. Each new piece of evidence was like a dagger to Daniel's heart. He lost weight, struggled to sleep, and found it increasingly difficult to focus on his work. But still, he maintained his facade, determined to uncover the whole truth before confronting Sarah. As the evidence mounted, so did Daniel's anger and pain. But beneath it all was a deeper emotion, a profound sense of loss. The future he had imagined, the life he had built with Sarah, it was all crumbling before his eyes. The confrontation. After careful planning and legal consultation, Daniel decided to confront Sarah on their 11th wedding anniversary. He prepared an elaborate meal, complete with Sarah's favorite dishes and their best wine. The dining room was lit with candles, soft music playing in the background, a perfect recreation of their happiest times together. As they ate, Daniel steered the conversation towards their relationship, their history together. "Do you remember our wedding day?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "The vows we made?" Sarah smiled, a flicker of guilt passing across her face. "Of course, it was the happiest day of my life." Daniel nodded, taking a sip of wine. "We promised to love and cherish each other, to be faithful and true." He paused, his eyes meeting Sarah's. "Tell me, Sarah, have you kept that promise?" The color drained from Sarah's face as Daniel presented her with the evidence of her infidelity. Photos, messages, hotel receipts. Her world came crashing down as Daniel revealed the extent of his actions. Divorce papers filed, joint accounts frozen, the house transferred solely into his name. "Why?" Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you just confront me?" Daniel's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath his words. "Because you didn't just betray our marriage, Sarah. You betrayed my trust, my love, everything we built together. I wanted you to understand the full weight of your actions." The new beginning. As Daniel walked out of the house with his packed bags, leaving Sarah alone with the wreckage of her choices, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Pain, certainly. Anger, without a doubt. But also, unexpectedly, a sense of freedom. In the months that followed, Daniel embarked on a journey of self-discovery. He traveled to places he'd always dreamed of seeing. The streets of Paris, the beaches of Bali, the mountains of Peru. He met new people who inspired him, rediscovered old passions he had set aside for his career and marriage. Slowly, Daniel began to heal. He learned to trust again, not just others, but himself. He realized that his worth wasn't tied to Sarah's betrayal, that he was deserving of love and respect. Sarah, meanwhile, was left to face the repercussions of her choices. Her affair with Mark ended quickly. He disappeared from her life as soon as things got complicated, unwilling to deal with the mess he had helped create. She lost the respect of colleagues who had once admired her, and found herself struggling to rebuild her career and reputation